to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, about to have a powerful conversation. This young woman here, Treva B. Lindsey, has written a book, America Goddam: Violence, Black Women, and the Struggle for Justice. Treva, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do I call you doctor? I mean, you're a PhD.
I mean, the title is earned, but Treva is perfectly fine with me. We in here, we family. I just want people to, engage the work. So Treva works. Okay. If you want to engage the work from Dr. Lindsey, that's cool too.
I think,
I like Dr. Lindsey.
Dr. Lindsey, Treva, maybe I'll put them all together. Dr. Treva Lindsey, Dr. Treva B. Lindsey. So doctor, America Goddam, I think is an important book, and I'm gonna tell you why. A lot of the conversations that are in this book have happened in chunks throughout the last several years. We've heard and seen hashtag Say Her Name. We've seen Black Lives Matter. We've heard about Black women dying in the healthcare system, specifically in maternity situations, and how that hasn't been a focus for our healthcare system here in America. Obviously we've heard about domestic violence for a long time. We've heard about, carceral violence, all of these different things. And I think we've heard about them separately. America Goddam puts them all in one place. Yes. And really breaks it down in a way where people can see. And I know it's important for people to understand, for Black women and people who want to understand what Black women are going through, all of the different levels of violence taking place against Black women in American society. And I just want to salute you, because I think this book is very important for people to see it all in one place.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I felt that way too. I felt that way as someone who is a survivor of multiple forms of violence, who is a historian of African-American history. And so bringing these together, my personal experiences, my engagement with folks who've experienced violence and this long history. But I wanted to make sense of it. Why do we have these absurd maternal mortality rates? Why do we see so many Black women experiencing femicide, Black femicide? In 2020, an average of 4 Black women were killed every day, right? And we were largely on lockdown in 2020. So that tells you something about the intimacy of these killings, how we get to talk about that, and how we get to talk about these issues without further adding to the criminalizing narratives that exist about Black people, right? My goal isn't to be like, these Black people are bad, these Black people are good, put them away, do this. I was like, how do we get at the root of this and actually address what's causing the harm in all of these different arenas of public and intimate life?
Well, I think it's. Right. I want to take your statement right there and unpack it. You made sure to articulate the perception of Black people and criminality, and a lot of times there's a disregard, a dismissiveness around Black death because of those perceptions. What you articulate in this book is this isn't about people who are somehow doing violence in society or acting out violence. This is happening to people who are just going about, regular law-abiding people going about their lives every day, which I think is important. And I think it's also important that women who are not Black understand the laundry list of items that Black women have to deal with that are different than women of other ethnic groups.
Absolutely. It's the compounding of this. In the beginning of the book, I kind of lay out these stakes, right? You got anti-blackness, you got misogynoir, which is a specific form of racist misogyny, hatred, and fear of Black women and girls, as coined by Moya Bailey. And you have, when these things combine, they are such a death-dealing force in the lives of Black women and girls. And so that means, yes, we're experiencing sexism and misogyny, but we're also experiencing the very distinct history of anti-Black racism and anti-Blackness. And oftentimes that puts us at odds with the state, that can put us at odds with our employers, that can put us in a position of being vulnerable in the healthcare system. When we look at someone like a Serena Williams, who even had to advocate for herself as she was dying, as she was giving birth, imagine how many Black women and Black girls and Black people with gestational capacity are dying literally to give birth. Right?
Oh, absolutely. When I saw that piece, Dr. Lindsey, I saw the doc, I was in tears because someone as successful as Serena Williams and rich, and she has all the accolades in the world, yet she was still denied the proper care. Her pain was dismissed constantly, and she almost died.
Right.
And that's a story that I hear from so many Black women, even access to doulas or just access to basic needs is completely denied. And it's disgusting.
Yes. And it's fatal, right? It has so many outcomes that are leaving families without their loved ones because we don't have that kind of care. And so we have to name that. We have to articulate that a Black woman of Serena's stature is going through that. Imagine what a poor Black woman is encountering in the healthcare system. Imagine someone who wasn't familiar with their body and what's happening and couldn't advocate for themselves in a more distinct way, in the way that she was. She knew something was wrong in her body and she knew her history and was able to articulate that. But this means that we're going to see all kinds of care, not just maternal care, but all kinds of healthcare issues that arise that are going to not be addressed with the urgency and the compassion that they deserve. And so you see very early on in COVID how Black people broadly become disproportionately impacted. And you see healthcare workers and different people, and this is not a knock to healthcare workers, but saying we need some better training if y'all are bringing in this anti-blackness, this misogynoir into the practice, and it's built into these systems.
It's a blatant disregard too. That's the overarching thing is it's a blatant disregard because there isn't a force that is holding the healthcare system or any of these systems accountable for Black women on behalf of Black women. There's not a powerful enough economic force, voting force, or even just sheer numbers, right? We live in a society where Black people are obviously outnumbered greatly by our white counterparts in society. And so just even in mass, you know, when you're looking at a population of, 40 or 50 million in the United States, just the sheer mass numbers creates an atmosphere for dismissal and disregard, right? By a system that is set up to kind of sort to whoever has the most power and influence.
Right. And that's why so often when many of us are saying the system isn't broken, it's working the way it's supposed to, is we're looking at history. We look at the history of medicine and see the violence that has been enacted on Black women's bodies. So we see the gynecology as a discipline, as a practice, was literally founded by examining and experimenting on and violating enslaved Black women. That's the history. And not being given pain medication, because there's a long-standing belief that holds into this day with the study that Black people feel less pain than other people, and therefore aren't often offered remedies when they're saying or articulating that we're in pain. And so you have an entire medical industry in many ways that's built on the backs of experimenting on and violating Black people, and then attempting to treat them within that system that still has all of these racist and sexist and harmful and anti-poor and ableist ideas about Black people. And that's going to be death dealing. And that's why we just say, goddamn, to it all, because there's so many ways that we're dealt death, slowly or spectacularly.
What is
Dr. Lindsey?
Oh, go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
Dr. Lindsey, in your book, each chapter focuses on a particular form of violence that Black women and girls experience in the U.S. Could you kind of walk us through some of the ones that you've highlighted?
Sure. So I start with first kind of just highlighting in the intro, since the title of the book is America Goddam, a nod to obviously Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddam, and the inspiration behind that song. So it's the assassination of Medgar Evers, an NAACP leader in 1963, as well as the 16th Street bombing, a Baptist church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, which killed, as people know them, the 4 little girls, Addie, Denise, Carol, and Cynthia, and it severely injured another little girl, Sarah. And so I wanted to frame this in terms of like, look, this is a Nina calling us to say their names even before we had a hashtag to do that. And here are these different ways that violence shows up. So it shows up in police violence, right? That's why we get say her name. And often it's disparately affecting disabled Black women, right? Black women who are in mental health crises and happening in the homes of Black women in these private spaces. So we don't have video. We don't have someone like a Darnella Frazier, who's a 17-year-old Black girl who filmed the murder of George Floyd. We don't often have that. Instead, we have Breonna Taylor sleep in her bed, Ayanna Stanley Jones sleep on her couch, Deborah Danner in her own home, Ellen Bumpers outside in her home, Eula Love outside of her home. The home becomes this distinct site of violence for Black women from the state. I followed up then what happens when we're inside, when we're in the prison or jail or detention centers. And so the number of Black women who die in police custody, most people are familiar with someone like a Sandra Bland, but there were 5 other Black women who died in police custody that same month that Sandra Bland died. And it's far more common than we often talk about. And so we're thinking about people who go in behind the wall and don't come back out and haven't been, in most cases, held accountable for anything. They haven't been charged with anything just yet, right? They've just been arrested. And then we move into the space of intimate, the home, but when the person who harms you is someone you may have even said, I love you to. And that can be your partner, that can be a parent, that can be a friend, that can be all kinds of dynamics. And that was the hardest chapter for me to write because so much of that is talking about intra-communal violence, right? What the media likes to call Black on Black crime, but I don't use that term because most crime happens interracially. White on white crime, right. That's just how this happens. It's communal. And because of segregation and redlining and such, most people who live in communities are racially segregated. So it's not surprising that we see that kind of attack. But I had to be honest about the ways that patriarchy and sexism show up in our homes. Then move to medical violence, as we've discussed, as well as this concept of unlivable living. So what happens to at the intersection of capitalism, poverty, anti-blackness, and misogynoir? You get missing Black girls. You get a terrible, terrible child welfare system. You get so many kids who are living in shelters and not cared for, and families who are not cared for, and services that are not provided. And we criminalize that. We criminalize poverty, which compounds the criminalizing of Blackness. And lastly, I talked about how words matter, the words that we say to one another and how we think about each other. So right now we got opioid patients in response to the opioid crisis. We were crack whores. We were crack babies, right? We were junkies. We were targeted for mass incarceration and decimated communities through these processes, as opposed to the healthcare approach that's being used now, that's primarily about this particular epidemic.
And mental health.
Exactly. We didn't receive any of that. We were criminal. We were the 3 strikes out. We were the super predators. And I saw that and wanted to talk about all of these different ways that those words, that rhetoric impacts Black women and girls, and how that plays out in our day-to-day lives, and sometimes in very spectacular and violent ways. So it's taking us through a number of sites of violence. And sadly, that's not even the totality of it, right? These are a lot of examples just to give people a sense of the heaviness and the struggle that we need to wage.
I want to hear from you, Dr. Treva, on as a Black woman who wrote this book, and I can clearly see how much of a heavy emotional lift this is, but you lift this every day, just walking outside. And when I see a book like this, for men, specifically Black men or people who love Black women, or have Black women in their family, I think, and I would like to think anyway, that a book like this helps people understand the emotions and the trauma, the triggering things going on every single moment of every single day in a Black woman's existence. That prevents them from being as happy and joyful as they potentially could be. That may prevent them from being as emotive and loving and caring as maybe they would like to be, but feel unsafe. I would love to hear from you. When people in your life understand what you're going through and can and can love you in the right way and embrace you in the right way and understand that each of these items on this list is affecting you every day, does that help bring your relationships tighter and closer?
That's a great question. I would say yes, that it does, because I believe in the relationships that I've forged. I believe that safety and the ability to be vulnerable in the relationships that I'm in is an important part of being present and being accomplice or a co-conspirator. I very rarely use ally to think about who I want to show up in my life. When I was writing this book, I talk about witness, that I'm asking folks to bear witness to this, but for me, it is witness. I am a survivor of multiple forms of violence. And I know my friends who are picking up this book are going to get a huge dose of something that's really hard for them at a personal level to process. But already some have just checked in and be like, sis, I see you, I feel you. What can I do? And here's some things I'm thinking I can do, but does that support you? And does that support others like you who have experienced this? And I think it's that active engagement in this, that taking a look at a book like this alongside amazing work by folks like Andrea Ritchie and Dorothy Roberts and Miriam Kaba and Patrice Douglas. There's so many folks who are starting to sound the alarm and have been sounding the alarm about the kinds of care that we need. And I end the book pretty hopefully that we can do this by taking stock of this, recognizing these systems and going to war for them. When I say defend and protect Black women, I mean that shit like for real. Like, I want you to actually defend. What I mean that is like, I need you to dismantle the systems that do this. I need you to love on the Black women in your life, love us in our complexities and our flaws and that, which doesn't mean we can't be held accountable. Love is also an accountability practice, but we have to understand what we're each coming to the table with to show up as our best selves to care for one another.
Powerful. The book, America Goddam. A very important read, articulated very well. Thank you for your work. Thank you for engaging in this work. And I want to close because, you know, we live in America's violent.
Yes.
Right?
We had a mass shooting yesterday. Another mass shooting yesterday.
America is a violent place, and it was founded in violence.
Yes.
Right. And, you know, there are things on this list that domestic violence, you know, when you think of First Nations people in this country, Native Americans in this country, when you think of many immigrants, whether that be Mexican Americans or Central Americans, South Americans who come to this nation as immigrants, lots of violence. But this list, there are things on this list that only Black women have experienced and are experiencing. And I think that that's another poignant piece of this book, is to understand how different the experience is as a Black woman. And my question for you is, does it help to know that other Black women can also see and understand the violence that they're going through? Because at a certain point, this must feel very lonely, like nobody knows what's taking place.
Yeah. So maybe about last year, I wrote a piece, and it started because there's this phrase that people say, right? Like, no one cares about Black girls. And a colleague and a friend of mine, Christina Sharp, said, it's not that no one, because the no one erases the Black women and girls who do care about Black women and girls. And we're not no one, right? So more people should care about us. And I think writing this, I wanted Black girls to feel seen. I wanted Black women to feel seen. I wanted the violence that we endure, the day-to-day of it, the spectacular of it, the intimacy of it, just the mundaneness of it, because it's so regular and so normalized, that I see you. I witness this with you. I witness this with you. And I believe that by others reading this, and for ourselves, that we get to see ourselves and hopefully have others see our pain rendered legible, that it is more than just data points. Because I could tell you about 2020 being the deadliest year for Black trans women on record, but if I tell you the stories of Rhea and Diamond and the context in which they're happening and the gruesomeness with which those murders are happening, it does something different, right? It enlivens it in a different way. And I don't believe that Black people ever have to humanize ourselves for people or that we can be dehumanized. I think the violence against us represents inhumanity towards us. That represents, in many cases, white supremacy's inhumanity, the inhumanity that comes with the exploitation of workers, the inhumanity that comes with the exploitation of women broadly, but specifically Black women, and connecting that to other struggles. I want this to be connected to other struggles of missing and murdered Indigenous women, or thinking about what happens in the violence that happens in detention centers, specifically to women from places like, you said, Central America and Mexico. This is important to make that, but that specificity allows us to dig in deep and get at the root cause of what's happening and try to do better by Black girls, because we're dying. We are dying and we are being killed. And that should matter, not just to us, but anyone who loves us or anyone who believes that their humanity is connected to how all of us thrive in this world.
Listen, go get the book, America Goddam. Doctor, thank you for your time today. And thank you for giving, because one of the big things in this is this helps people articulate what they're feeling.
Yes.
Often, people don't have the words for the weight that is on them.
Yes.
The trauma that they've been through, the things that they've seen and heard or friends have been through or experienced, and they don't really have the words to get their feelings out. And that can be very frustrating, right? Where you're just emotional because you can't even say what you're feeling because you don't know what it is that you're feeling.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the power in this book is you're giving people the words.
Thank you.
To say that this happened. I saw this. My mother went through this. My aunts, my sisters went through this. I saw this. You know what I mean? And this is what it's called. And so that way, when you're having those feelings, you don't know why you're having those feelings. You don't know why each and every day you're feeling this weight. This book gives it to you. In a way that hopefully can make the weight a little bit lighter.
Yes, I sure hope so.
America Goddam, go get the book. Thank you for your time today, Treva.
Thank y'all so much.
You, Dr.
Y'all
Lindsey.
take care. Thank you,
Dr. Lindsey.
Yes, my mom will be happy that y'all called me doctor.